They say the moon goddess weaves our fates while we sleep, threading destinies through our dreams until we wake to find ourselves bound by invisible strings we never chose. But what happens when those strings are meant for someone else, and you're just the shadow standing too close when fate's needle slips? That's how Lyra's story begins, not as the chosen one, but as the forgotten one who happened to be in the wrong place when destiny came calling. The morning of the Luna selection ceremony dawned crisp and golden over the northern valleys, and Lyra watched from the servants' quarters as her older sister Celeste prepared for her triumph. Everyone knew Celeste would be chosen. She was everything a Luna should be, a pure beta, with sterling silver eyes that caught the light like captured moonbeams, hair that fell in perfect obsidian waves, and a voice that could command a room without ever rising above a whisper. And then there was Lyra, the Omega, the afterthought. Where Celeste glided, Lyra stumbled. Where Celeste's wolf form shimmered like polished chrome under moonlight, Lyra could barely hold her shift for more than minutes before collapsing in exhaustion. Born to the same beta parents, she was nature's cruel joke, an omega in a family line that hadn't produced one in 7 generations. "Hold still," Lyra murmured, carefully adjusting the ceremonial silver circlet in Celeste's hair. Her fingers, rough from years of washing and mending, caught on the delicate metalwork. "Careful," Celeste snapped, jerking away. "These hands that scrub floors shouldn't handle sacred items." Lyra stepped back, eyes downcast. She'd learned long ago that invisibility was her best defense. In a pack where strength determined status, and omegas were barely more than servants, drawing attention meant inviting ridicule, or worse. Their mother, Thessa, swept into the room, her beta presence filling the space with nervous energy. "The convoy from the Crystal Palace has been spotted," she announced, her voice tight with anticipation. "Alpha King Fenris himself leads them." The room seemed to contract at the mention of his name. Fenris Blackmoon, the Alpha King who ruled the 7 territories with a fist of iron and a heart of winter stone. Stories of his ruthlessness traveled on every trade wind, how he'd torn apart his own uncle for challenging his throne, how he'd never taken a Luna because no she-wolf had proven strong enough to stand beside him. "Remember?" Thessa gripped Celeste's shoulders. "When you're chosen as Luna, our family's fortune changes forever. No more struggling to pay tribute. No more bowing to lesser alphas." Neither woman looked at Lyra. They never did when discussing the family's future. "Lyra will carry your train, kind," Thessa added as an afterthought. "Try not to trip, child. Don't embarrass your sister on her day of glory." Lyra nodded silently. She'd spent 19 years in Celeste's shadow. One more day wouldn't matter. Tomorrow, after Celeste became Luna, Lyra planned to slip away entirely. She'd saved enough copper coins to buy passage to the outer settlements, where omegas could disappear into mundane human lives, forgotten and free. She'd already hidden her meager belongings in a hollow tree by the southern road. A change of clothes, some dried meat, and the one treasure she'd never let anyone discover, a small leather journal where she recorded the strange dreams that came to her every full moon. Dreams of running through starlight, of power that tasted like lightning, of golden eyes that saw through every pretense to the soul beneath. Foolish Omega dreams. Nothing more. "The king approaches the pack house," a young wolf's shout echoed across the grounds. Lyra watched through the window as the convoy approached, black banners bearing the Black Moon crest snapping in the mountain wind. Her breath caught as she saw him, Alpha King Fenris himself, riding at the head of his warriors. Even from a distance, his presence was overwhelming. He sat his massive black wolf mount as if he and the beast were one entity, his dark hair wild as winter storms, his bearing radiating the kind of power that made other alphas bare their throats in submission. As if sensing her gaze, the Alpha King's head turned toward the window. For one impossible moment, their eyes met across the distance, and Lyra felt something electric shoot through her spine. His eyes weren't the cold silver she'd expected, but a deep, burning gold like the heart of a star. The world tilted, her knees buckled. "Get up!" Celeste hissed, yanking Lyra to her feet. "Stop making a spectacle of yourself." But Lyra barely heard her. Something was stirring in her chest, something ancient and wild that had never stirred before. Something that whispered, "He's here. Finally, he's here." The great hall of the mountain pack had been transformed into something from ancient legends. Hundreds of candles floated suspended in midair, their flames never flickering despite the mountain wind that whistled through the high windows. Every eligible beta and alpha female stood in perfect rows, dressed in white silk that marked them as candidates for Luna. Lyra stood behind Celeste, holding the train of her sister's elaborate gown. As an Omega, she wasn't permitted to wear white. Instead, she wore the gray of servitude, marking her as an attendant rather than a participant. The distinction should have stung, but Lyra found herself oddly distracted. That moment when the Alpha King's eyes had met hers kept replaying in her mind. Those golden eyes, nothing like the cold silver she'd imagined, had seemed to pierce straight through her, as if he'd seen something hidden even from herself. "Stop fidgeting," Celeste hissed without turning around. "You're wrinkling my train." The great doors opened with a sound like thunder, and Alpha King Fenris entered with his entourage. Up close, he was even more overwhelming. He stood at least a head taller than the other alphas, his presence making the very air feel charged with electricity. His dark hair was pulled back, revealing sharp cheekbones and a jaw that could have been carved from granite. But it was his eyes that drew attention. Those impossible golden eyes that seemed to hold the wisdom of centuries despite his relatively young age. Pack Alpha Roderick, Lyra's father's superior, stepped forward with a bow so deep his beard nearly touched the floor. "Your Majesty, we are honored beyond measure. Our pack's finest daughters await your inspection." Fenris's expression remained unreadable. "Begin." What followed was a carefully choreographed dance of presentation. Each candidate stepped forward, demonstrated their wolf form, recited their lineage, and displayed whatever accomplishments might catch a king's attention. Some showed their fighting prowess, others their diplomatic skills, and a few attempted to demonstrate artistic talents. Celeste, when her turn came, was magnificent. Her transformation was fluid as water, her silver wolf form practically glowing in the candlelight. She recited 7 generations of pure beta lineage, without stumbling, then demonstrated her tactical knowledge by solving a complex battle formation problem that Roderick presented. The crowd murmured appreciatively. Several of the king's guards nodded approval. Even stern Beta Commander Theron, the king's right hand, looked impressed. But Fenris's expression never changed. Those golden eyes remained distant, almost bored, as if he were performing a tedious obligation rather than selecting his life mate and future queen. "Is this all?" he asked when the last candidate had presented. Roderick's face flushed. "These are our finest, Your Majesty. Each one would make a worthy Luna. None of them will do." The hall fell silent. Celeste's face went white, then red. Thessa swayed as if she might faint. "Your Majesty," Roderick stammered, "perhaps if you took more time to consider." "There's another." Fenris's voice cut through the room like a blade. "I sense another wolf here." "That's impossible," Roderick said. "Every eligible female has been presented." "Not every female, Crastus." The Alpha King's gaze swept the room and landed on Lyra. "You, in gray, Step forward. Lyra's blood turned to ice. Every eye in the hall turned to her. She heard Celeste's sharp intake of breath, felt her mother's horror radiating across the room. Your Majesty, Roderick said quickly, that's merely an Omega, a servant. She's not eligible for. I'll determine who's eligible. Fenris's tone brooked no argument. Step forward. Lyra's legs moved without her permission. She walked through the parted crowd, feeling their stares like physical weights. Some looked pitying, others amused, and a few openly disgusted that an Omega would dare stand where betas had been rejected. She stopped before the Alpha King, and not knowing what else to do, dropped into the lowest curtsy she could manage without falling. Rise, he commanded. Look at me. She lifted her head, and again those golden eyes caught hers. This close, she could see flecks of amber in them, like captured sunlight. Something stirred in her chest, that same wild feeling from before, stronger now, like a door trying to open from the inside. Proceed. Transform, he said. Panic flooded her. Your Majesty, my wolf is... She swallowed hard. I can't hold the form for long, I'm weak. Transform. His voice was gentler this time, but no less commanding. Lyra closed her eyes, reaching for her wolf. The shift was painful, as always, her bones protesting, her muscles screaming. But then something strange happened. As her wolf form emerged, instead of the usual exhaustion, she felt strong. Gasps echoed through the hall. Lyra opened her eyes and looked down. Her wolf form, usually a shabby brown, barely bigger than a regular dog, was different. Her fur was midnight black, shot through with threads of silver that seemed to capture and reflect the candlelight. She stood taller, stronger, and when she looked at her reflection in the polished floor, her eyes were gold. Impossible, someone whispered. An Omega can't. She's not an Omega, Fenris said, his voice carrying a note of satisfaction. She never was. He moved closer, and Lyra's wolf didn't cower as it usually did around alphas. Instead, she stood straight, meeting his gaze as an equal. Hidden blood, Beta Commander Theron breathed. How did no one sense it? Someone did, Fenris said, his eyes never leaving Lyra's. Someone went to great lengths to suppress it, to hide what she truly is. He extended his hand, and Lyra, still in wolf form, found herself pressing her muzzle into his palm. The touch sent electricity through her entire being. Change back, he said softly. The transformation back to human was smoother than it had ever been. She stood before him, trembling but somehow stronger than before. What's your name? He asked. Lyra, she whispered. Lyra, Silvermist. Lyra Silvermist, he repeated, and her name on his lips sounded like a prayer. Then, loud enough for all to hear, I claim this woman as my chosen Luna. The hall erupted in chaos. Preposterous. This is preposterous. Thessa's voice cracked through the chaos like a whip. She's an Omega. She's nothing. You can't possibly... Silence. Fenris didn't raise his voice, but the single word carried such authority that Thessa's mouth snapped shut. Question my choice again, and I'll consider it a challenge to my authority. The threat hung in the air. Everyone knew what happened to those who challenged the Alpha King. Celeste stepped forward, her perfect composure finally cracking. Your Majesty, surely there's been a mistake. Lyra can barely shift. She has no training in pack politics, no knowledge of royal protocols. She cleans floors and mends clothes. How could she possibly serve as Luna? The same way she survived 19 years with her true nature suppressed, Fenris replied, his golden eyes narrowing. With a strength none of you recognized because you were too blind to look past your own prejudices. He turned to Beta Commander Theron. Prepare my chambers. The Luna will stay in the Crystal Palace tonight. Tonight? Roderick sputtered. But the bonding ceremony? The preparations? Tradition dictates. Tradition dictates that an Alpha King may claim his mate when and how he chooses, quote, Fenris interrupted. Or have you forgotten pack law, Roderick? Lyra stood frozen in the center of it all, her mind struggling to process what was happening. This morning she'd been planning her escape to the outer settlements. Now the most powerful alpha in 7 territories was claiming her as his mate. I need to gather my things, she said quietly, surprised when her voice didn't shake. Fenris studied her. What things? Servants' rags? The few copper coins you've saved? His words might have been cruel, but his tone was oddly gentle. Everything you had before this moment no longer matters. You're Luna now. Not yet, she said, finding a spark of courage, claimed me. But I haven't accepted. The hall went silent again. Several wolves actually stepped back, as if expecting Fenris to strike her down for such defiance. Instead, he smiled, a real smile that transformed his harsh features into something almost boyish. You're right. Will you accept my claim, Lyra Silvermist? She felt the weight of every eye upon her. Her mother's horrified face, Celeste's fury, Roderick's disbelief. But also, something else, other Omegas among the servants, watching with something like hope in their eyes. Why me? She asked. You took one look and decided. How could you know? Because my wolf knew, he said simply. The moment I entered this territory, he began calling for you. And when our eyes met through that window, I felt what you felt, that recognition, that pull. Don't pretend you didn't feel it too. She had felt it, that electric current, that sense of something ancient awakening. But admitting it meant accepting that everything she'd believed about herself was a lie. If I accept, she said slowly, what happens to me? You come with me to the Crystal Palace. You learn to use the power that's been dormant inside you. You become what you were always meant to be. And if I refuse? His expression darkened. Then you condemn yourself to a half-life, always sensing something missing, something calling you that you can never answer. And I. He paused. I spend eternity searching for something I've already found and lost. The raw honesty in his voice made her chest ache. This wasn't the cold, ruthless Alpha King of legends. This was a man offering her not just a crown, but an answer to every question she'd never dared ask about herself. The dreams, she whispered, so quietly only he could hear. Every full moon, I dream of running through starlight, of power like lightning, of golden eyes. His intake of breath was sharp. You've been dreaming of your true self, and of me. Thank you for watching. That's impossible. We've never met, haven't we? He reached out, his fingers barely brushing her cheek. The touch sent that familiar electricity through her. Your soul has been calling to mine long before our bodies met. That's what true mates are, Lyra. Not just chosen partners, but souls that were split and searching for their other half. That's a fairy tale, she said, but her voice lacked conviction. 3 minutes ago, you thought you were just an Omega. Pract, he reminded her. Perhaps it's time to consider that fairy tales might hold more truth than you believed. She looked around the hall at her family who'd never truly seen her, at the pack that had dismissed her, at the life she'd been about to flee. Then she looked at Fenris, this dangerous, beautiful stranger who somehow felt like coming home. I accept, she said. The bond snapped into place like a physical thing, a silver thread connecting her heart to his. She gasped at the sensation, and through their new connection, she felt his relief, his joy, his fierce protectiveness. Then let us leave this place, he said, offering her his hand. As she placed her palm in his, Celeste made one last desperate attempt. She's cursed, she shouted. Our grandmother warned us. Lyra's birth was marked by dark omens. She killed our mother's first wolf during the birthing. That's why her nature was suppressed. She's dangerous. Fenris turned slowly to face Celeste. Dangerous? He laughed, but there was no humor in it. You have no idea what danger means, little beta, but you're right about one thing: she was cursed. Cursed to live beneath those who should have cherished her. That curse ends now. He looked at Thessa. You knew. You knew what she was, and you hid it. Why? Thessa's face crumbled. The witch said, she said, if Lyra's true nature emerged before her 20th year, it would bring calamity. We were protecting the pack. You were protecting yourselves, Fenris snarled. From the shame of having produced something more powerful than you could understand. The Crystal Palace lived up to its name. Every surface seemed carved from living ice that never melted, catching and refracting light into thousands of rainbows. Lyra had never imagined such beauty existed in the world. Yet as Fenris led her through the soaring halls, she noticed the servants and guards carefully avoiding her gaze. They're afraid, she observed. Not of you, Fenris said, guiding her into a private wing. Of what your presence means. The Northern Valleys pack isn't the only one who forgot that Omega doesn't always mean weak. Sometimes it means something else entirely. What am I? The question burst from her before she could stop it. You said I'm not truly an Omega, but I'm not an Alpha or Beta either. So what? You're something rarer. He opened a door to reveal chambers that took her breath away. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooked a valley where the aurora danced even in daylight, something that only appears once in a generation, if that. He moved to a bookshelf and pulled out an ancient tome, its pages yellowed with age. Here, read this passage. Lyra took the book carefully, afraid it might crumble. The text was in the old language, but somehow she could read it. When the moon bleeds silver and the stars align in the constellation of the White Wolf, there shall be born a Luna Omega, neither dominant nor submissive, but balanced. She will carry the power to unite what was divided, to heal what was broken, to stand as equal to the strongest Alpha. But beware if her power is suppressed past the 20th year, it will consume her from within, leaving only ash and sorrow. Her hands trembled. My birthday is next week. I know. Fenris's voice was grim. Your family's fear nearly killed you. A few more days, and your suppressed power would have turned inward, destroying you from within. How did you know to come now? He moved to the window, his reflection ghost-like in the crystal. I've been searching for 3 years, since the dream started. Every pack in the 7 territories. Looking for the woman with midnight hair and golden eyes who ran through my dreams. But my eyes were brown. Your human eyes were brown. Your wolf's eyes were always gold, weren't they? Even suppressed, your true nature showed through. Power. She thought back to the few times she'd managed to shift, how quickly she'd always changed back to avoid anyone seeing. Yes, she admitted. Point. Tell me about the dreams, he said, turning to face her. Lyra sat on the edge of a velvet chair, unsure if she should be so casual in such opulent surroundings. They started when I turned 16. Always the same. I'm running through a forest made of starlight, and I'm powerful. So powerful it feels like I could reshape the world. Power. And there's someone running beside me, someone whose presence feels like... She paused, blushing. Like home, he finished. I know, I've had the same dream. That's impossible. Is it? He knelt before her chair. bringing them to eye level. Lyra, true mates share dreams. It's the rarest form of bonding, but it exists. We've been calling to each other for years. A knock interrupted them. Beta Commander Theron entered, his scarred face grave. Your Majesty, we have a problem. What kind of problem? The Northern Valley's pack is demanding the Luna's return. They claim she's property of the pack, that without proper ceremony and compensation, your claim is invalid. Fenris's growl made the windows tremble. Property. Property is. Furthermore, Theron continued, his distaste evident, they're claiming she owes a debt of service. 19 years of food, shelter, and protection that must be repaid before she can leave the pack formally. They kept me as a slave, Lyra said, anger sparking in her chest. I worked every day since I could walk. I cooked, cleaned, mended, tended, and they claim I owe them? It's a delay tactic, Theron explained. They're buying time. For what? Fenris demanded. For this. Theron produced a scroll marked with the Council of Elders seal. A formal challenge to your choice of Luna. They claim you've been bewitched, that no true Alpha King would choose an Omega. They're demanding you prove your soundness of mind through combat trials. Fenris crushed the scroll in his fist. Let them come. No, Lyra said, standing. Both men turned to her in surprise. They're my former pack. This is my fight. Lyra, you don't understand, Theron said carefully. Combat trials aren't just fights. They're tests of worthiness, magic, strength, strategy. Things an Omega could never master? I am Dune Omega could never master. She felt that stirring in her chest again, stronger now. Tell me, Commander, what happens if I refuse to hide anymore? Theron and Fenris exchanged glances. We find out what a Luna Omega truly is, Fenris said. Then let them come, Lyra said, and for the first time in her life, she felt power ripple through her voice. The windows sang in response, the aurora outside flaring brighter. I'm done being their shadow. That night, as she lay in a bed softer than clouds, Lyra dreamed again. But this time, she wasn't running through starlight alone. Fenris was beside her, their wolves moving in perfect synchronization. And in the dream, she wasn't just powerful, she was incandescent, her very presence making the stars burn brighter. When she woke, she found Fenris sitting in a chair beside her bed, watching over her, plus where. You were glowing, he said softly. In your sleep, you literally glowed. I dreamed we were running together. I know, he said. And she realized with a start that their bond was strengthening. She could feel his emotions, concern, wonder, and something deeper, warmer. Why were you watching me sleep? Because I spent 3 years searching for you, he said simply. I'm afraid if I look away, you'll vanish like a dream at dawn. I'm not going anywhere, she promised. No, he agreed, his golden eyes fierce. You're not. Dawn brought unwelcome visitors. Lyra watched from the palace balcony as a procession of wolves approached, the Northern Valley's pack's banners stark against the snow. At its head rode Celeste, wearing ceremonial armor that caught the morning light. She's positioning herself as their champion, Fenris observed, joining Lyra on the balcony. His presence was warm against the mountain chill. She always wanted to be special, Lyra said. Being the most beautiful wasn't enough. Being the strongest beta wasn't enough. She needed to be chosen. And now her rejected sister was chosen instead. He studied her face. You pity her. I understand her. There's a difference. Below, the pack delegates were being escorted to the throne room. Fenris touched Lyra's shoulder gently. You don't have to face them yet. As Luna elect, You have the right to refuse audience until mine, too. No. Lyra squared her shoulders. I've hidden long enough. The throne room was a study in barely contained hostility. The Northern Valley's delegation stood in formation, Celeste at their center like a silver flame. Thessa flanked her, along with Pack Alpha, Roderick, and several elders. Lyra recognized all wolves who had treated her as furniture for 19 years. Alpha King Fenris, Roderick began formally. We come seeking the return of our pack member, Lyra Silvermist. The Luna elect goes nowhere, Fenris said from his throne. Lyra stood beside him, wearing a gown of midnight blue that made her skin glow like moonlight. She has not been formally released from pack obligations, Elder Matthias interjected, his milky eyes somehow still sharp. By law, she remains Northern Valley property until… Property? Lyra's voice cut through the formal proceedings. Is that what I was, Elder Matthias? When I tended your wounds after the border skirmish? When I spent 3 nights keeping your fever down? Was I property then? The old wolf's face flushed. You were Omega. You had duties. I had slavery disguised as duty. She stepped forward, and several of the delegation actually stepped back. But please, tell me more about these obligations I haven't fulfilled. Celeste finally spoke, her voice honey-sweet poison. Sister, we're only thinking of your welfare. This sudden change, this claim of being something more than Omega, it's dangerous. Remember what grandmother said about your birth? You mean the grandmother who died when I was 3? Lyra asked. The one whose warnings conveniently emerged only after I was claimed by the Alpha King? The portents were real, Thessa insisted. The blood moon, the howling winds, your birth cord wrapped 3 times like a noose. Enough. Fenris stood, his power filling the room like a living thing. You come here spouting superstitions and demanding property rights over my chosen mate. State your true purpose or leave. Roderick straightened. We formally challenge the validity of this claiming. By the ancient laws, we invoke the right of trial. On what grounds? Beta Commander Theron demanded. On the grounds that an Omega cannot be Luna, Celeste said, stepping forward. On the grounds that our king has been deceived or bewitched. And on the grounds that I, the rightful choice, was overlooked through supernatural manipulation. You dare accuse my mate of witchcraft? Fenris's growl made the crystal walls sing ominously. I accuse her of nothing, Celeste said smoothly. I merely request she prove her worthiness through the trials. Unless, of course, she's afraid, Power said. It was bait, obvious and crude, but effective, quote. I accept, Lyra said before Fenris could respond. Lyra, no, he began. 3 trials, she continued, meeting Celeste's gaze steadily. As tradition dictates, combat, wisdom, and spirit. But I have a condition. Celeste's eyes narrowed. What condition? When I win, not if. When the Northern Valley's pack releases all Omegas from servitude. Complete freedom, no debts, no obligations. Gasps echoed through the room. Such a demand was unprecedented. You can't, Roderick started. I can and I do. Unless you're afraid? Lyra threw Celeste's words back at her. Celeste's perfect features twisted with rage before smoothing. Accepted, and when you lose, you return to your proper place, as an Omega, forever. The trials begin at sunset, Elder Matthias intoned. May the moon goddess have mercy on the worthy. As the delegation left, Fenris pulled Lyra aside. That was reckless. Celeste has trained her entire life for combat. You've had less than a day to understand your true nature, power. Then we have until sunset to change that, Lyra said. You said I'm a Luna Omega. Tell me what that means. Tell me everything. He studied her face, then nodded slowly. Theron, clear the training grounds. We have work to do. The training grounds were unlike anything Lyra had experienced. Weapons lined the walls, but more importantly, the very air thrummed with power-old magic woven into the stones themselves. A Luna Omega isn't about physical strength, Fenris explained, guiding her to the center of the space. It's about balance. You can channel both dominant and submissive energies, use an opponent's strength against them. Show me. For the next hours, he did. He taught her to feel the flow of power, to redirect rather than resist. When he came at her with alpha strength, she learned to bend like water, letting his force carry him past. Power and aloe. When he held back, she learned to surge forward, using the space he created. You're not fighting, he said after she successfully threw him for the third time. You're dancing. Every fight is a dance, and you're learning to lead and follow simultaneously. But it wasn't just combat they practiced. Theron brought ancient texts, testing her knowledge. To everyone's surprise, including her own, Lyra could read languages she'd never studied, understand concepts she'd never been taught. It's like it was always there, she said, wonderingly, just sleeping. Your power was suppressed, not destroyed, Fenris said. It's been building for 19 years, now it's waking up. As the sun began to sink, painting the mountains gold and red, Lyra stood at the window, doubt creeping in. What if they're right? She whispered. What if I'm not meant for this? Fenris wrapped his arms around her from behind, his chin resting on her head. Through their bond, she felt his absolute certainty. Pallas. Do you remember your dreams? He asked. The ones where you run through starlight? Yes. That's not a dream, Lyra. That's a memory. A genetic memory of what Luna Omegas used to be before fear made the packs suppress them. You're not becoming something new. You're remembering what you always were. She turned in his arms. And if I fail? Then I'll challenge every law in the 7 territories to keep you anyway. His golden eyes burned with determination. But you won't fail. How do you know? Because I've seen you in my dreams for 3 years, he said. And in every one, you were magnificent. The arena materialized from the mountain itself, ancient magic responding to the call for trials. Stone seats rose in concentric circles, around a floor of polished obsidian that reflected the setting sun like blood. Every pack within traveling distance had sent representatives. Word of an Omega challenging a Beta for the position of Luna had spread like wildfire. Lyra entered wearing the traditional trial garments, simple black pants and tunic that wouldn't restrict movement. Across from her, Celeste wore the same, though somehow she made even combat clothes look regal. First trial, Elder Matthias announced, his voice carrying across the arena. Combat, not to the death but to submission. The challenger may choose weapons or wolf form. Wolf form, Celeste said immediately, already beginning to shift. Her transformation was beautiful, as always. Silver fur rippled into existence, her form growing larger, stronger. She was magnificent, everything a Beta should be. Lyra closed her eyes, reaching for her wolf. For a moment, nothing happened. She heard snickers from the Northern Valley's delegation. Then the power rushed through her. Her transformation was unlike anything she'd experienced before. No pain, no struggle, just a feeling of coming home. When she opened her eyes, gasps echoed through the arena. Her wolf was larger than that morning's shift. The midnight fur now held threads of gold alongside the silver, creating a pattern like stars against the night sky. But it was her presence that silenced the crowd, something ancient and primal, that made even the alphas shift uncomfortably. Celeste attacked first, using her superior training to aim for Lyra's throat. But Lyra moved like water, flowing around the attack. Fenris's training echoed in her mind. Don't fight, dance. For several minutes, Celeste chased shadows. Every attack met empty air, every strategy countered by instinct Lyra didn't know she possessed. Frustration began to show in Celeste's movements, making her sloppy. That's when Lyra struck. Not with claws or teeth, but with something else, a pulse of pure energy that knocked Celeste off her feet. The silver wolf tumbled across the obsidian, scrambling to stand. Impossible, someone breathed. Omegas can't project power. Lyra did it again. This time, softer, almost gentle. The energy wrapped around Celeste like invisible bonds, holding her in place. Through their familial connection, weak as it was, Lyra projected a single thought: yield. Celeste struggled, her pride warring with the inevitable. But as Lyra's power pressed down, not painful but inexorable, she finally lowered her head in submission. First trial to Lyra's silver mist, Elder Matthias announced, though he sounded shocked. Both wolves shifted back to human form. Celeste's face was flushed with humiliation, but also something else, a dawning fear. "What are you?" she whispered. "Your sister," Lyra replied sadly. "I was always your sister. You just never saw me." The second trial took place in the palace's great library, its crystalline walls containing thousands of years of pack history, power. 3 riddles would be posed, ancient questions that tested not just knowledge but understanding. Elder Matthias stood between the two women, an ancient scroll in his weathered hands. "First riddle," he intoned. "What runs without feet, speaks without mouth, and carries the memories of the dead?" Celeste answered quickly. "A river. It runs without feet, babbles without a mouth, and carries the memories of those who have passed in its waters." The elder nodded. "Correct." He turned to Lyra. "Your riddle. What is the thing that makes the strongest alpha kneel, the wisest elder foolish, and the omega equal to all?" Lyra felt the weight of the question. This wasn't just a riddle, it was a test of her understanding of power itself. "Death," Celeste whispered from her position, unable to help herself. But Lyra shook her head. "Love," she said clearly. "Love makes alphas kneel before their mates, makes wise elders act foolishly to protect their children, and in love, all wolves are equal." Silence stretched through the library. Then Elder Matthias nodded slowly. "Correct." The second round began. "Celeste, your riddle. What force binds the pack? Stronger than Alpha Command?" "Loyalty," Celeste answered confidently. "Pack loyalty binds stronger than any command." "Acceptable," the elder said. "Lyra, what breaks without breaking, yields without yielding, and conquers without fighting?" This one made her pause. She thought of her 19 years of servitude, of how she'd survived, of what Fenris had taught her. "Water," she said finally. "Water breaks on rocks without breaking its nature, yields to any container without yielding its essence, and conquers stone through patience, not force." Correct. They were tied. The final riddle would determine the trial. Elder Matthias's eyes grew distant. "This riddle is for both of you. The first to answer correctly wins. I am held by those who cannot touch me, broken by those who never speak me, and kept by those who never sought me. Kings command me, but I command fate. What am I?" Lyra's heart stopped. Her riddle. The one she'd asked the cursed beast in her dreams, the one that had haunted her sleeping hours for years. But how could Elder Matthias know it? Celeste frowned, working through the logic. "A secret? No. A law? Perhaps. Lyra looked at Fenris, who stood at the edge of the room. His golden eyes held a message she couldn't quite read. Time, Celeste said suddenly. The answer is time. Incorrect, Elder Matthias said. Celeste's face fell. The trial was Lyra's if she could answer, but Lyra stood frozen. This riddle from her dreams, appearing here, now it couldn't be coincidence. The answer, Lyra said slowly, understanding dawning, is a promise. Elder Matthias smiled, the first genuine expression she'd ever seen from him. Correct. A promise is held by those who cannot physically touch it, broken by those who never speak it aloud, and kept by those who never sought to make it. Kings command promises from their subjects, but promises command the fate of kingdoms. How did you know that riddle? Lyra asked. The elder's smile grew sad. Because your grandmother told it to me, the night before she died. She said you would need to hear it one day, when you were ready to understand what you truly are. The final trial was the most dangerous. A journey into the spirit realm where wolf souls were laid bare, where truth couldn't hide behind flesh and pretense. The ritual circle was drawn in salt and moonstone dust. Lyra and Celeste knelt at opposite points, while Elder Matthias began the ancient chant. The world fell away. Lyra found herself in a forest of silver trees under a star-filled sky. Celeste stood across from her, but here in the spirit realm, they appeared as their true selves. Celeste glowed with beta strength, silver and proud, but there were shadows in her light, dark patches of envy and fear. Lyra looked down at herself and gasped. She wasn't just one thing. Her spirit form shifted constantly, sometimes wolf, sometimes human, sometimes something in between. Gold and silver, midnight and dawn, Omega and Alpha energies swirling in perfect balance. The trial is simple. Elder Matthias's voice echoed from everywhere and nowhere. Face your deepest truth. The one who runs from their truth loses. The forest changed. Suddenly, Lyra was back in the servant quarters of her childhood home. She saw herself at 7, scrubbing floors, while Celeste played with silk dolls. At 12, watching through a crack in the door as Celeste received her first transformation ceremony, while Lyra was locked in the cellar to prevent embarrassment. At 16, the night her mate rejected her, calling her worthless, defective, broken. This is your truth, Celeste's voice taunted. You're nothing. You've always been nothing. The memories hurt, each one a dagger of pain. But then Lyra noticed something else in the memories, small moments she'd forgotten. The kitchen Omega, who'd saved extra bread for her. The elderly human servant, who'd taught her to read in secret. The traveling merchant who'd snuck her books when her father wasn't watching. No, Lyra said, understanding flooding through her. That's not my truth. That's your fear. The scene shifted. Now they stood in Celeste's memories. A 5-year-old Celeste being told she must be perfect, always, or risk losing her parents' love. Celeste at 10, crying alone because showing weakness meant failure. Celeste at 15, forcing herself to be cruel to Lyra because acknowledging her sister's strength meant admitting the system was wrong. You were afraid too, Lyra said softly. You were trapped by the same system, just in a golden cage instead of a cellar. Celeste's spirit form flickered, the shadows growing. Stop it. But the truth kept coming. The night Lyra was born, when their grandmother had whispered prophecy not of curse, but of change. A child born to reshape the world, to bridge the divide between ranks. And their parents' decision to suppress it, to hide it, because change meant losing their comfortable position in the hierarchy. They lied to us both, Lyra said, stepping toward her sister. They made you the enforcer and me the victim, but we were both prisoners. I was chosen. Celeste screamed, her spirit form blazing brighter. I was special. You are special, Lyra said, but not because you're a beta, because you're you, because you're my sister, because despite everything they taught you, you still couldn't bring yourself to truly hate me. The final truth emerged, a memory from when they were very young, before the conditioning took hold. Celeste sneaking into Lyra's room during a thunderstorm, the two of them huddled together, telling each other stories until the fear passed. I loved you, Celeste whispered, her spirit form's shadows beginning to lighten. Before they taught me not to, I loved you. I know, Lyra said, tears streaming down her face. I never stopped loving you. The forest began to dissolve. But before it did, Celeste spoke one more time. You were never broken, Lyra. I think. I think I always knew that. I was just too afraid to admit it. They returned to the physical world to find the arena in absolute silence. The trial by spirit was private, observers could only wait. But something had changed. The hostility in Celeste's eyes was gone, replaced by something raw and painful and real. I yield, Celeste said, loud enough for all to hear. The trials are concluded. Lyra, Silvermist has proven her worth. The crowd erupted, but Lyra only had eyes for her sister. She crossed the obsidian floor and pulled Celeste into an embrace. For a moment, Celeste stood rigid. Then she collapsed into her sister's arms, 19 years of enforced cruelty finally breaking. I'm sorry, Celeste sobbed. I'm so sorry. I know, Lyra whispered. We both are. Victory in the trials should have meant peace. But that night, Lyra woke to find the palace in chaos. Guards ran through the corridors, their faces grim. She found Fenris in the war room, surrounded by his advisors. What's happening? His face was carved from stone. The southern pacts are mobilizing. They claim your trials were illegitimate, that no Omega should stand as Luna. They're demanding I renounce you, or face war. Led by Alpha King Bloodmoon, Theron added grimly. Fenris's cousin, who expected to have his daughter chosen as Luna. Lyra felt the weight of it, her elevation threatening not just tradition but political alliances, generations in the making. How many packs? She asked. 7, possibly 8, Fenris said. Enough to cause real damage. Then I should go, Lyra said quietly. If my presence causes war, no. Fenris's growl shook the windows. I will not let fear dictate our choices. Your Majesty, a guard burst in. The Southern Pack's army, they're not coming here. They're heading to the northern valleys. Ice flooded Lyra's veins. My family, my former pack, they're defenseless against that kind of force. It's a trap, Theron said immediately. They know you'll go to defend them. Of course it's a trap, Lyra said. But I'm still going. Lyra, they may have treated me poorly, but there are innocents there. Omegas, who have no part in this. Children who don't understand pack politics. She met Fenris's eyes. I won't let them suffer for my choices. Fenris studied her for a long moment. Then we go together. They rode through the night, a small force of elite guards surrounding them. As dawn broke, they crested the hill overlooking the northern valleys, and Lyra's heart sank. The Southern Pack army surrounded the village, hundreds of wolves in battle formation. At their head stood Alpha King Bloodmoon, a massive wolf with fur the color of dried blood. Cousin, Cain called out as they approached. You arrived just in time to witness the correction of your mistake. The only mistake here is yours, Fenris replied. Stand down. I think not. Cain gestured to where the Northern Valley's pack huddled in the center of the village. Lyra could see her parents, Celeste, The Omegas she'd grown up serving beside, kind. You see, I've discovered something interesting about your precious Luna. He produced an ancient scroll, a binding contract, signed by her parents at her birth. She was promised to my pack's sold, actually in exchange for protection. The suppression of her nature wasn't just fear, it was part of the bargain. Lyra felt the truth of it hit her like a physical blow. Her parents had literally sold her before she could walk. That contract is invalid, Fenris snarled. Is it? A blood contract, witnessed by the moon goddess herself? Cain smiled, showing too many teeth. T as, done them, T as, done them, done them, done them, done them, done them. She belongs to my pack by law, unless, of course, she can pay the blood debt. What blood debt? Lyra demanded. The price of breaking a blood contract. You must face me in single combat, to the death. No, Fenris said immediately. I'll face you. The debt is hers, Cain interrupted. Unless the great Luna Omega is afraid? Lyra dismounted from her horse. I accept. The circle was drawn quickly. No ceremony this time, just death waiting in the morning light. Kaine shifted immediately into his massive wolf form, easily twice Lyra's size, pocked of teen. But as Lyra reached for her wolf, something new happened. The balance she'd found in the spirit realm remained. Instead of fully shifting, she stopped halfway, a form she'd never seen before. Part human, part wolf, standing on two legs, but with claws, fangs, and partial fur. A form that should have been impossible. Cain hesitated, clearly unnerved. What abomination? Lyra moved faster than thought. The hybrid form combined human intelligence with wolf instinct, creating something unprecedented. She danced around Kaine's attacks, using techniques that required both human flexibility and wolf strength. But Kaine was old, powerful, and cunning. He caught her shoulder with his claws, sending her rolling across the ground. Blood soaked through her shirt. You see? He howled to the watching crowd. This is what happens when we break tradition. Monsters! Lyra pushed herself up, feeling the wound already beginning to heal another impossible thing. You're right, she said, her voice carrying both human words and wolf growl. I am a monster. I'm the monster, the old ways created, neither one thing nor another, forced to exist in between. But that's also what makes me strong. She let the power flow through her fully for the first time. Not just alpha or omega energy, but both, swirling together into something new. The ground beneath her feet cracked. The air itself seemed to sing. Impossible, Cain breathed. You keep using that word, Lyra said, advancing on him. But you're wrong. I'm not impossible. I'm inevitable. The world is changing. Alpha Cain, the rigid hierarchies, the oppression of omegas, the fear of anything different, it's all ending. She moved again, but this time she didn't just dodge or strike. She did what Fenris had taught her, she danced. Each movement flowed into the next, using Kaine's own strength against him. When he lunged, she redirected. When he pulled back, she surged forward. The fight ended not with a killing blow, but with Kaine on his back, Lyra's claws at his throat. Yield, she said. His eyes blazed with hatred. Never. Kill me or be known as weak. No, Lyra said, stepping back. Killing you proves nothing, except that I'm like you. I choose mercy. I choose to break the cycle. Now, she turned to address all the watching wolves. The blood debt is paid not with death, but with change. Any Omega who wishes to leave their pack freely may do so. Any Alpha who oppresses those weaker will answer to me. The old ways die today. You can't. Cain started. I am Luna to the Alpha King, Lyra said, her voice carrying absolute authority. I speak with his voice. Challenge me again, and you challenge the throne itself. She looked at her parents, huddled with the Northern Valleys pack. The contract you signed is void. Whatever debt you thought you were paying, whatever fear drove you to sell your own daughter, it's over. Thessa fell to her knees, sobbing. We thought we were protecting you, the prophecy said. Prophecy. The prophecy said I would bring change, Lyra interrupted. And you were so afraid of change that you nearly destroyed me to prevent it. That night, in the safety of the Crystal Palace, Elder Matthias requested a private audience. He looked older than Lyra remembered, as if the day's events had aged him years. Your grandmother left something for you, he said, producing an ancient leather journal. She made me swear to give it to you only after you'd claimed your true nature. Lyra took the journal with trembling hands. Her grandmother's handwriting filled the pages, not the ravings of a dying woman, but careful documentation. My dearest Lyra, if you're reading this, then you've finally become what I saw the night you were born. The Luna Omega, the bridge between worlds. The prophecy everyone feared wasn't a curse but a promise. You were born to heal the divide that has poisoned our kind for generations. But power like yours terrifies those who benefit from the current order. Your parents didn't sell you to the Southern Pack out of greed, but out of fear. Kaine's father threatened to slaughter the entire Northern Valleys if they didn't suppress your nature. The contract was their attempt to buy time, hoping that someday, somehow, things would change. But prophecies have a way of fulfilling themselves, don't they? There's more you need to know. The Luna Omega isn't just a rare wolf type, it's a return to what we once were. Before the hierarchies, before the rigid categories, all wolves could access both energies. It was the wars, the need for strict command structures, that divided us. You're not an anomaly, my dear one. You're a reminder of what we lost. The Alpha King, who would claim you, was foretold as well, one who would see beyond rank to the soul beneath. Together, you will reshape our world. But beware, there are those who will do anything to prevent this change. The Council of Shadows still exists, hidden, working to maintain the old ways. They will come for you when you're most vulnerable. Trust in your mate, trust in your power, and never forget you were born to be exactly who you are. All my love, Grandmother Celine. Lyra looked up from the journal to find Fenris reading over her shoulder, his face grave. The Council of Shadows? Elder Matthias nodded slowly. A secret organization of traditionalist alphas. They've controlled pack politics from the shadows for generations. Your grandmother was once part of them, before she realized their true nature. That's why they killed her. Lyra breathed. It wasn't age or illness. No, Matthias confirmed. She was poisoned, slowly, to make it look natural, but not before she hid the truth about you. A knock interrupted them. Theron entered, his face tight with concern. Your Majesty, we have a situation. Celeste Silvermist is here. She says it's urgent. They found Celeste in the throne room, still wearing traveling clothes, her usually perfect appearance disheveled. Lyra, she gasped. They're coming. The council, I overheard Father and the other elders, Pakir. They plan to attack during tomorrow's lunar ceremony, when you're officially crowned Luna. How many? Fenris demanded. I don't know, but they have something, a weapon. They called it the Moon's Bane. Father said it could strip a Luna Omega's power permanently. Lyra felt ice in her veins. After everything, to lose her power just as she'd found it. Why are you telling us? She asked her sister. Celeste met her eyes. Because for the first time in my life, I'm choosing to do what's right instead of what's expected. She dropped to one knee. Let me help, please. The ceremony can't be postponed, Theron said. It must happen during tomorrow's full moon, or tradition states. Tradition, Lyra said bitterly. Always tradition. No, Fenris said thoughtfully. Not tradition. Opportunity. He turned to Celeste. How much do they know about Lyra's actual abilities? Only what they saw at the trials and the combat with Cain. A slow smile spread across Fenris's face. Then they don't know about the full moon. What about it? Lyra asks. Power. A Luna Omega's power isn't just balanced during the full moon, he said. It's amplified, exponentially. How do you know that? He pulled out his own journal filled with 3 years of research. I've been studying everything I could find about Luna Omegas since the dream started. On the full moon, you won't just be powerful, Lyra. You'll be unstoppable. Then we use the ceremony as bait, Theron said, understanding dawning. Draw them all out at once. It's dangerous, Fenris warned. If we're wrong about the moon's effect. We're not wrong, Lyra said, certainty filling her. She could feel it already. The pull of tomorrow's moon. Power building under her skin like thunder before lightning. I can feel her calling. Her? The moon goddess. She's been waiting for this moment as long as we have. The night of the full moon arrived with an electric tension in the air. The ceremony would take place in the sacred grove, where generations of Lunas had been crowned under the open sky. Lyra stood before a mirror in her chambers, barely recognizing herself. The ceremonial gown was woven from moonlight itself, or so it seemed. The fabric shifted between silver and shadow, with every movement. Her hair, usually kept simple, was arranged in an elaborate crown of braids, threaded with silver chains that caught the light like captured stars. You're nervous, Fenris observed from the doorway. Terrified, she corrected. What if the council doesn't come? What if they do? What if your research is wrong and the moon doesn't? He crossed to her in 3 strides, capturing her face in his hands. Breathe. She did, inhaling his scent of pine and winter storms. Through their bond, she felt his absolute confidence in her. Do you trust me? He asked. Always. Then trust me when I say this. Tonight, you become who you were always meant to be. The sacred grove was ancient, older than the palace, older than the 7 territories. Massive oak trees formed a natural circle, their branches intertwining overhead to create a living cathedral. Moonlight filtered through the leaves, creating patterns of light and shadow that seemed to dance with otherworldly purpose. The ceremony began at moonrise. Wolves from every allied pack stood witness, arranged in concentric circles around the central altar. Lyra could see her parents in the crowd, Celeste standing with the palace guard as she'd requested, and hundreds of faces, some supportive, some skeptical, all waiting. Elder Matthias began the ancient words, his voice carrying across the grove, but Lyra barely heard them. Her attention was fixed on the shadows between the trees, where she could sense movement. They were here. The first attack came just as she knelt before the altar. A dart, silent and deadly, aimed at her heart. But the moon was full above them, and Lyra's power surged. She caught the dart inches from her chest, crushing it to powder. Now, someone shouted, and the Council of Shadows emerged from hiding. Dozens of wolves, all alphas, all powerful, converging on the ceremony. But they'd made a crucial error. They'd expected to face the Lyra from the trials, powerful but still learning. They hadn't accounted for the moon. Power flooded through her, not violent but inexorable, like the tide. Her form shifted not to wolf, not to human, but to something between and beyond. She stood, the ceremonial gown transforming with her into armor of moonlight and shadow. "You dare interrupt a sacred ceremony?" Her voice wasn't quite her own, older, deeper, carrying the weight of every Luna who had come before. The attacking Alphas hesitated. This wasn't what they'd expected. Alpha Roderick, her former pack Alpha, stepped forward carrying a crystal that pulsed with sickly green light. "The moon's bane," he announced. "One touch, and your unnatural power disappears forever." He lunged at her with the crystal. Lyra didn't move. She didn't need to. The moment the crystal touched her, it shattered not into pieces, but into light that was absorbed into her skin. "Impossible," Roderick gasped. "You still don't understand," Lyra said, her voice carrying to every corner of the grove. "The moon's bane only works on those who fight against their nature. I'm not fighting anymore. I'm accepting." She spread her arms, and power rippled outward. Not an attack, but a revelation. Every wolf in the grove suddenly felt what she felt. The perfect balance, the harmony between dominance and submission, the peace that came from accepting all aspects of oneself. Several of the council members fell to their knees, overwhelmed. Others tried to flee but found themselves frozen, held by bonds of pure moonlight. "You have a choice," Lyra announced. "Accept the changing world or be left behind by it. But you will not stop it." One younger Alpha, barely more than a boy, spoke up. "But without the hierarchies, without the order, we'll have chaos." Lyra smiled gently. "No, we'll have freedom. The freedom for Omegas to be more than servants, for Alphas to be more than tyrants, for all of us to be who we truly are, not what tradition demands." She turned to face the crowd. "I stand before you as Luna not to rule over you, but to serve alongside you, to bridge the divides that have separated us, to heal the wounds that tradition has carved into our souls." The moon reached its zenith, and Lyra felt the final surge of power. Without conscious thought, she reached out to every wolf present, not commanding, but offering a glimpse of what they could be without the chains of rigid hierarchy. The transformation was instant and overwhelming. Alphas felt the peace of letting go of constant dominance. Omegas felt the strength they'd always possessed but been forbidden to access. Betas discovered they were more than just the middle ground. When the vision ended, the grove was silent. Then, one by one, the wolves began to kneel, not in submission, but in acknowledgement. Even the council members, their resistance broken, bowed their heads. "Rise," Lyra said softly. "We kneel to no one anymore. We stand together." 1 year later, Lyra stood on the same balcony where she'd first watched her sister arrive for the selection ceremony. But everything had changed. The Crystal Palace was no longer a symbol of exclusive power, but a center of learning, where wolves of all ranks came to study, to grow, to discover themselves. Lost in thought? Fenris wrapped his arms around her from behind, his hand coming to rest on her swollen belly. "Remembering," she said. "This time last year, I was nobody. An Omega scrubbing floors, planning to run away." "You were never nobody," he corrected. "You were always you. It just took the rest of us time to see it." She turned in his arms, studying his face. The harsh lines had softened over the past year. He smiled more, laughed often, and the cold Alpha King of Legends had become something more, a leader who ruled with strength and compassion in equal measure. "The healers say twins," she told him. "They can sense 2 heartbeats." "Oh." His eyes widened. "Twins? Are you certain?" "An Alpha and an Omega," she confirmed. "Perfect balance." He pressed his forehead to hers. "Like their mother." A knock interrupted them. Celeste entered, wearing the silver uniform of the Royal Guard, a position she'd earned through merit, not blood. The past year had transformed her, too. Gone was the bitter superiority, replaced by genuine confidence. Consul. The council meeting is about to begin, she announced. The representatives from all 7 territories have arrived. The new council was nothing like the shadow organization it replaced. Representatives from every rank sat as equals, making decisions through consensus rather than dominance. It had been difficult at first. Centuries of tradition didn't die easily but slowly. It was working. As they entered the council chamber, Lyra saw the fruits of change. Former Omegas sat beside Alphas, their voices carrying equal weight. Packs that had been enemies now worked together. The rigid structures that had once seemed unbreakable were dissolving into something organic, natural. Luna Lyra, Elder Matthias, greeted her. He'd adapted to the changes better than most, perhaps because he'd always known they were coming. We have a request from the Eastern Territories. 3 Omega Wolves seek sanctuary. They claim their pack still practices the old ways. Then we offer them sanctuary and send educators to their pack, Lyra said. Change doesn't happen overnight, but it does happen. And if their alpha resists? Asked a young beta representative. Then we remind him that the world has changed, Fenris said, his tone leaving no room for argument. Peacefully if possible, but the old ways are ending, one way or another. After the meeting, Lyra walked through the palace gardens, now open to all wolves regardless of rank. She watched Omega children playing with Alpha pups, their parents chatting without the rigid formality that once would have separated them. You did this, Celeste said, joining her. You changed everything. We all did, Lyra corrected. I was just the catalyst. Do you ever regret it? The simple life you could have had? Lyra thought of those dark mornings scrubbing floors, of the dreams that had seemed so impossible, of the girl who'd believed she was broken. Never, she said. That wasn't a simple life. It was a small life, crushed into a shape that didn't fit. All of this chaos and change and challenge, this is freedom? That night, as the moon rose full and bright, Lyra stood with Fenris before their people. The ceremony wasn't for crowning or claiming, but for celebration, the first anniversary of the new order. A year ago, Lyra addressed the crowd, I was told I was nothing. Many of you were told the same. That you were too weak, too strong, too different to matter. But we've proven them wrong. We've proven that our differences make us stronger, that hierarchy is not destiny, that love, not dominance, is the greatest power we possess. Powers. The crowd erupted in howls of approval. Alphas and Omegas, betas and humans, all voices raised as one. Later, in their private chambers, Fenris pulled out a familiar journal. Your grandmother's? Lyra asked. The last entry, he said, showing her a page she'd somehow missed. My dearest child, if you're reading this final message, then the prophecy is complete. You've not just found your power but shared it. You've not just risen but lifted others with you. Know this. What you've done is not an ending but a beginning. Your children will be born into a world where they can be anything, become anyone, love without limits. The moon's blessing is upon you, as it always has been. You were never cursed, never broken, never less than. You were waiting, like the moon waits behind clouds, for your moment to shine. And oh, how you shine. Lyra set down the journal, tears streaming down her face. Through the window, the moon bathed everything in silver light, not choosing favorites, not distinguishing between ranks, but blessing all equally with its glow. She knew, Lyra whispered. All along she knew. She knew you, Fenris said, pulling her close. Just as I knew you in dreams, as the moon knew you before you were born, you were always meant for this. As if in response, the twins moved within her, and Lyra felt the future shifting, changing, becoming something beautiful and new. The Omega who became Luna, the servant who became queen, the broken girl who healed a kingdom. But most importantly, the woman who learned that sometimes the greatest power isn't in being chosen, it's in choosing yourself. And as the moon watched over them, blessing the new world they'd built from the ashes of the old, Lyra knew with absolute certainty this was only the beginning. The fairy tale she'd never dared to dream had become truth, but not through rescue or chance. She'd written her own story, word by word, choice by choice, until fiction became reality. And in the end, that was the greatest magic of all.